My name is Kyle Berger, and I developed the game Pixelot for Steam, Android, and iOS.
Kyle, talk about where the idea for this game came from. Obviously, it has RPG roots, but it's really cutesy, pixelated. Like, where did the concept for this game come from?
Sure, so I initially created the game to be Android and iOS only because I got a lot of feedback, and I was one of those people who was just searching the App Store every day trying to find an RPG game to play, and there just wasn't anything out there. And so I said, maybe I can just make one myself. And so I grew up playing GBA games like Pokemon, Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem, and Golden Sun. And I kind of fell in love with those graphics and just the style of games that those were. So I thought, there's no reason something like this shouldn't be available on your phone. And, as I got more into it, I said, okay, well, this could be a real game. And then I started working on, porting it to Steam too, and, trying to get the desktop version up and running. So I really wanted to make a game that was pretty easy to play so that people could kind of jump into it pretty easy in the same way that like Pokemon is, but it has more of an in-depth layer to it the farther in you get.
So talk about the name, Pixelot. Where did you come up with that name in a game's got to be a difficult process. What made you decide on that?
So I definitely went back and forth, and I had some, crazy unique names at first, and then I thought, okay, well, they're pixel graphics. And then I just thought, like Lancelot and the quest for the Holy Grail. So I just combined the two, and that was it.
Well, that makes sense, because I would have thought you named it Pixelot because there are a lot of pixel assets in the game. But the Lancelot reference makes more sense now.
Yeah.
So obviously you're a one-man team. Did you do everything, including music, design, coding, everything, art yourself, or did you have to outsource anything?
So the only thing I outsourced was the music. So the music's all Creative Commons 3 with attribution. So it's all free to use for commercial use. Songs I just found on the internet and put together.
Wow, so like it's quite literally just you. Like there was no
Yep.
third party involved. It was 100% you. That's incredible.
Right. I just before release, the day before, I got a commission back for the title page with the logo, the characters with the sword, and so I paid a couple dollars for that, but that was about it.
So a few art assets for Steam and what have you, but
Right.
most of the design, coding, and everything was just your one-man team.
Yep, that's correct.
Do you have any background in like game design? Is this like your first game? Have you worked on other games? Is this like a hobby or?
It's definitely just a hobby. So as a full-time career, I'm a software developer. I make mobile apps. But as far as game development goes, in college, I made a game called Toast. It's just like an endless runner where you're a piece of toast and you jump up and down, trying to avoid other pieces of food. It was really basic in pixel art graphics, and that really took off. And so from there, I just said, all right, well, I want to keep doing this. And then at some point I said, it's always been my dream to make my own RPG. I'm just going to go for it. And everyone said, it's going to take you like 5 years. And they were right. It took me 5 years. But it was well worth it.
Well, I mean, it's hard, right? Because you have your full-time job, and then since this is a part-time job, you got to deal with family and all that stuff on top of that, and your regular work. So, like, where did you find time to do this? Was it just like a couple hours a day during the
Right.
week, and then part-time on weekends?
Yeah, that's definitely what it is. I mean, I always try to make sure the wife and the little daughter come first. You got to put family first.
I feel like since you're already a software, you kind of had like a leading edge already because you were a software developer already. So you kind of understood basics of coding and understand that side of the development process. So that was easy for you. But what was hard for you in this game?
I mean, the beginning was definitely the art. The art's gotten progressively better, at least I think so, compared to where it first started. It took me a while to kind of figure out, what looks good. I ended up watching hours and hours of pixel art tutorials and see, what are the common mistakes, what areas can I improve in, and so that was definitely a challenge at the start, and I'm sure I still have a long way to go to make that look better, but that was one of the main areas. Then after that, it was trying to figure out how to do this whole marketing thing.
Yeah, it really is. It is difficult. The biggest problem a lot of developers have, even the larger ones, is like realizing there are games out there and you can play it. Because
Right.
there's so much noise, and it's getting above that noise is really difficult. But that's when we try to help out. So talk about inspirations. Obviously, I see a lot of Final Fantasy in this. It's an
Right.
RPG. Talk about the combat and the exploration and you're leveling up in your classes and stuff.
Yeah, so definitely, I grew up playing those games, Final Fantasy 1 through 6 on the Game Boy Advance, and I like the idea of, you have your characters that are heavy armor, and you've got your characters that are healers and wizards. And so I always wanted to play games where I could, create my own character, create my own classes, do melds of the two. And so I played a lot of World of Warcraft too growing up, and I thought, okay, well, what kind of aspects from that can I bring in here too?
It's funny because like I see all that just in your trailer alone. I see a lot of the Pokemon, the Final Fantasies, the genre just kind of comes out on its own. Like you mentioned before, this was originally a mobile game that you turned to Steam. Are you looking to port it to Nintendo Switch?
So that would definitely be cool. Now, to do that though, I got to get a good amount of sales, because otherwise Nintendo doesn't send you a Switch to make it on.
Yeah, the dev kits are not free. I think
Right.
that's a big misconception, especially if you have if you're a bigger developer. The Xbox development kits and the PS dev kits are very expensive, so they don't just they may hand you one if you're a AAA developer like Naughty Dog, but not if you're a one-man team. They're gonna want the reimbursement for that.
Yeah, they definitely want to see that I've got sales and that people are interested and all of that.
What was the most difficult part of designing the game overall?
I think for the desktop has been the hardest, just because trying to figure out, I don't play that many games on the computer anymore as I've gotten older. So trying to figure out what do people really like. And so when I made the game, I've gotten a lot of feedback since then that people really want controller support. They want it to go full screen. So I've been working on those features, try and get those out there for people. Because when I originally designed it, I designed it with mobile in mind. So when you hit the menu, the buttons are on the sides, because that's where your thumbs are going to be. A lot of things are touch controlled, but when you're on the computer, you just want to hit buttons. And so I've got to kind of rethink how to set it up that way instead.
Yeah, it's funny how people look at the mobile device, then when you have to move it to a PC, how all of a sudden, you have a completely different user interface, and it does not work. I mean, if people have a touch screen, but not many people have touch screens at home, your average person, for their PC, so you have to change almost everything.
Right.
So that's a lot of work.
Yeah, something that's convenient on a mobile screen isn't always convenient. Moving your mouse across the whole screen.
What did you learn from this experience? And like I said, this was the second game you've ever made, because it sounds like you're more in the industrial, maybe server maintenance side of software engineering.
Right.
What was it like designing the second game you've ever made?
I mean, I think it was a big learning curve. I mean, I noticed that, so when I first released the game, I released about a third of the content on the App Store, and that took me 3 years to do. And then the next year I was able to do another third, and this last year I did a whole bunch more, kind of finished the game. And I think as I went on, it got a lot easier and progressed a lot quicker. I think there was just trying to figure out, there's so much that goes in depth to creating an RPG that people just don't think about. Like trying to manage, EXP curves as you level up. It's not just you get 10 experience, next one's 15. You gotta make it strategically harder to level up at a certain rate that people are used to, and you gotta scale that with the monsters that are around your area, so that you can't just grind level 1 monsters to get to level 100 real quick. So there's a lot of hidden mechanics in RPGs that I never even thought about or even knew existed. So running into all of those and thinking, okay, how do other games handle this? What's the best way to do this?
You talk about the story in your game. What's going on in this world?
So the story should be a little bit more unique, but essentially, 1,000 years ago, the Dark Lord, took over the world, killed his brothers, betrayed them, created an ultimate weapon, and so he got sealed away by the 6 elemental crystals. So you go out and you try to find these crystals to try and make sure he stays sealed. Little do you know that you're actually kind of doing his work for him. And there's a big plot twist at the end that kind of handles that. But essentially, you got to fight his 3 daughters, and they're kind of causing trouble all over the world. So the nations are fighting each other. Some of them have a civil war going on. So there's a lot going on.
So how big is your world that you've created?
It's pretty big. There's a lot of content. I mean, I think people are going to be really surprised by how much there really is to do. There's 3 major cities. There's about 15 dungeons to go through. There's a large amount of content.
That's pretty cool. And you talked about your classes and stuff, and you have weapons and armor sets and spells as well, which even opens that door up to more.
Right.
And I'm sure you've even hidden stuff in the game as well, stuff that's harder to find, that's not out on the blatant path, Yeah,
so I wanted to make, in Pokemon, there isn't 4 Pokemon. There's 151 times however many generations. But so I wanted to make a game where you had endless of possibilities for your party combinations. So there's 30 plus different classes that you can choose from in the game. So implementing all of those and then their promotions and then all their skills, it's kind of hard for two people to play it the exact same way. There's over 500 items to, customize and equip and upgrade.
What game engine did you build the game in?
So I built it using libgdx, which isn't that popular. Yeah, it's not that big of an engine, but it's the one I first found a tutorial on in college. And when I was about 3 years in, I discovered Unity, but I said, I'm 3 years in, I gotta finish.
Yeah, it's too late, yeah.
Yeah, so I think my next project, I might try out using Unity or something that ports the Switch easier.
Yeah, that's crazy because I mean, obviously, we all know Unreal, we all know Unity, and then like Windows game makers actually making a lot of comeback for people who are new to just developing games in general. But that's the first time I've ever heard that engine be used in any game.
Yeah, it's not that large. It's not so. libgdx is kind of unique in that, things like Unity, there's like 1,000 ways to do things, and there's pre-made ways to do it. In libgdx, they hand you a screen and you have a pencil essentially, and you just draw everything. So all the menus are, drawn using the actual engine. I say, okay, draw this rectangle here and make it this color. So versus, Unity, you load an asset that has the different menus, and so it's a lot more hands-on, which was kind of nice.
Yeah, it's all about what you're comfortable with, right? Like the end result's the same. It just, like I said, you have problems with porting, specifically when you use a kind of a not so popular engine, because there's more steps to that. So porting it to PC or Switch or Xbox becomes kind of a chore.
Right, exactly.
Do you feel like your background in software engineering like helped you in this process, or was making games a completely different experience from that end on your perspective?
I think it definitely helped me, and I think the reverse is also true. I think making games made me a better software developer too.
What are you most excited about for people to experience with your game?
I think, there was a review on Steam that I think captured it pretty well, that this game isn't, you're going to sit down and you're going to hardcore plan out your intense dungeon. This game is, you've got a break from work and you just want to relax, so you can just pick this up, play a couple levels, beat a couple dungeons, set it down, and it'll save and it'll be right there for you when you get back. It's really easy to pick up and put down and kind of just enjoy your way through it.
So Pixelot, was this originally meant to be like a 2D pixel game, or did you have like inspirations for it to be like more of like a 3D like RPG?
I mean, I think a 3D RPG would have been cool, but I knew I was never going to be able to do something like that.
I guess, yeah.
That's more than a one-man team job, I think, at least.
I mean, like it's amazing that like they have like Unity and Unreal have like assets you can like buy and purchase to put in the game or just use. So like, right. But like then again, that's rigging and cameras and all this other stuff that would turn your 5-year project into a 10-year project. And
yep.
I think it's so cool that game development is so approachable now to anybody. I mean, even if you don't have an engineering software background, like there's still really easy ways to get into it and understand the concept of design and creation and coding and UI and all that stuff. Like we have so many options and tools at your fingertips. I do believe Unity is free as long as you don't sell your game, so it's intense. Is the engine you using, is that a free engine? Do you have to buy a license for that?
No, it's all free. And I think Unity is free too even if you sell it. I think there's some different plans you can use that cost you money to kind of remove the default Unity logos.
Yeah, well, how far we've come the last 20 years. I've interviewed game devs that have stories of how they had to rent out like $5,000 an hour like rendering rooms, to get something out, you know, because they didn't have that power back in the early 90s. They had to specifically go find it. Now computers are so powerful, you can do practically everything at home in your garage.
Yeah.
Did the COVID epidemic affect the game's development at all, or were you already working from home and so you just kind of...
Yeah, I was already working from home. So if anything, it got me some motivation, keep working harder to kind of release it. I thought more people will be at home. Maybe more people are playing games right now.
That's awesome, man. So Pixelot is out now. It's on mobile, Android, and iOS, and Steam.
Yes.
And you're going to be working. It would be great to have it on Switch, but it's got to sell well. So if you want to support, if you guys want the game on Switch, you got to support it and buy it on one of those platforms. And I think it's $3 on mobile, which is like super reasonable.
Yeah. it's one of those things where I watched a whole bunch of videos, and essentially you can't charge more than $3 for a game on mobile, but you can't charge less than $10 or $15 for a game on Steam, because otherwise people won't play it. So it's the same game, depends how you want to play it, I guess.
So it's available on mobile and Steam right now. Pixelot, go support it if you like RPGs, Final Fantasy, Pokemon, and classic Find the Crystal stories, which are always good. Those are always good, man. Dark Crystal, Final Fantasy, they all work. They keep being used because they work, and they work well. And Kyle, where can people go to find more information about you as a developer and your game?
So they can go onto my Twitter at Iceburger3. I mean, I post pretty frequently about what I'm working on, the development I've got. That's where I'm most active, probably. And then from there, I'm sure you can find all my other socials.
Awesome, man. Do you think this will kind of lure you away from the engineering front end side and going more into game development, or are you happy where you are as an engineer?
I think you can't turn down a steady paycheck.